Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reset with Raven podcast. I am your host, Raven M. Harris, and I am excited that you are here. Today's episode is all about vision. Now, we all have heard about vision boards and goal setting, but today's guest actually puts this into reality. He had to go through some things before he could really understand the power of visualization. Everything from debt, burnout, depression, failed marriage. So join us as today we talk with Steve Gamlin, former radio personality and former stand up comedian, now motivational speaker, as he shares with us how we can move from our rock bottom by starting with putting pen to paper. Welcome, Steve.
Hey there, Raven. Thank you so much for having me on. And Bush, if you put macaroni and glitter around the edge of that introduction, my mom would hang it on her fridge. That was very, very sweet and kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Steve, I'm sure we have a lot of millennials listening. And one of the things that struck me when we first met offline was about your life journey and that your 30s were a big turning point for you. Start
Yes.
with telling us about some of those major life events that I alluded to a little bit in the introduction that really shaped your 30s and that maybe precipitated this personal development journey that you're on and that you're helping others through as well.
Yeah, right around in my mid 30s, all of a sudden I had one of these realizations where I just sat and looked at where my life was going. And on paper, it all looked great. And I just sat, I said, is this all there is? I was working 50 to 60 hours a week in the radio industry, which had been my dream job since I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was married. I owned a DJ business, so I was DJing almost every weekend, sometimes as many as 100 events per year. And I was just completely burned out. And in a very rash, not very well thought out decision, I walked away from my radio career, and then my marriage fell apart. And then I realized at age 35, I was $62,000 in debt because I had not been paying attention to where all my money had been going. I spent a ton and was just making minimum payments here and there, and the debt just kept racking up and up. And even I, until I was filling out the divorce paperwork, had no idea how bad things were. And at age 35, had a very humbling crash and burn and wound up crawling back home and living with family for a bit and just trying to salvage what was left, my DJ business, and that was it. And then shortly after, a couple of interesting events caused me to become a motivational speaker and a stand-up comedian. And slowly over the past 20 years, well, slowly at first, I've put it all back together and created a life that does not burn me out. It just excites me now.
Mm. So I want to talk about that reset. So when you said I moved back home or crawling back home,
Yeah.
I've had a similar experience as well, where it's just like I've done something. I feel like if former me would have been like, never do this. This is a terrible idea. I like quit my job, had no idea what was next, and came back home. And to say that it was humbling for someone I'm an only child, I've had like a very kind of independent mindset style. The way I just live my life is just like, if it's, like, what's that phrase? I think it's like cat in the hat. If it's to be, it's up to me. I've always been like that. And then I like find myself burned out, just not enjoying anything about my current circumstance, and I come back home and I call that like my life reset. Tell us
Yeah.
about like, so you get back home, you're 35, your money's funny or completely depleted, and now what?
It actually turned into the greatest blessing because right about that time, my dad's health physically and cognitively started to decline a bit. So it was a very good thing that I was there. And for those who may be religious or a strong faith or whatever, it was a sign that I was supposed to be there at that moment, even though all the reasons that led to it caused me to want to get a giant L tattooed on my forehead. Like, you are just a loser in life right now. Everybody but you has it all together. And as it turned out, I was supposed to be there. I had built a recording studio and an office at my dad's home anyway. So I was there 24/7, taking care of the yard, taking care of the house, taking care of him, having a safe place to land while I sifted through the ashes to see what I could salvage and rebuild after blowing my life to a million pieces. So now looking back 2 decades later, I was supposed to be there because I otherwise could not have helped to make a difference in his life that I was able to. So I took a lot of the sting out of where I saw myself in that time and how I described myself. I was very self-deprecating for many years over that little time period. I was my own punching bag for a long time, which is something I caution people on now.
That's a really good point, and I want to discuss that in terms of sometimes of us being our own biggest self critics, and as you call it, just really down on ourselves, thinking like, oh, I'm a failure or I'm a loser, or when things don't go as we've planned. I remember that that's a conversation my mentor and I were having, and it's something I've just recently, I think, been graduating from, is that feeling of like when it doesn't go the exact way that I had it in my head, the way I had it laid out, seeing it as a complete and total, as you said, putting that big L on our forehead, rather than seeing, okay, what's the blessing in this? And it sounds like this time with your father and being there and being a helping hand and helping with his health care, and just also giving yourself that peace, that space to be in a safe place. And that's something I found too, like being able to be back home has given me some time to just kind of like relax, like take some of that, especially even the financial burden off as well. So definitely a really good point of finding the blessing in things that we sometimes see as like, oh, this is a total like failure, and just being disappointed in ourselves, because I know we can often like beat ourselves down. And I think you're seeing even more and more millennials or young people come back home, like this financial situation we're in presently is it's hard. The housing market it's very challenging. Rent is uncontrolled. So
Mm.
it's actually a blessing to have a place that you can come back to in times like that. So thank you for pointing that out. So I'm curious to know too, like what was next for you in your personal development and in your growth, and then also to like career wise, what were you thinking next after you came back home?
While I was what I refer to now as sitting in the ashes for a year or so, for those old enough to remember the old Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote cartoons back in the day, the coyote could never catch the Roadrunner, but he just kept trying, and he'd wear these Acme rocket roller skates and go off a cliff and just blow up. But the next day, he'd go chase that Roadrunner again. And I thought, well, okay, I'm down in the ashes. I went off the cliff. I drove myself off.
Hmm.
I want to create the best version of myself, personally and professionally. I want to become, I only wanted to have one more loving relationship in my life. So I was going to make myself the best version of me I could be to attract the woman, my forever partner. And so I really sat and I did a lot of reading and contemplating and putting pen to paper and just describing who I needed to become. A better communicator for sure, because I used to be a person who shut down. When conflict came up, I just got quiet. The problem with getting quiet is you can only stay quiet for so long, and then one little thing will blow it all up. So I wanted to be a more open and honest and timely communicator. So that was something I worked on for a long time. And professionally, I started to work with a life coach who I had just met recently through a friend of a friend of a friend. And early on in our sessions, on a very hot and humid August afternoon in 2003, I had $3 left in my pocket for that week. And I decided to take out all my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls at a driving range. And I am a very, very dangerous golfer. So I went to the farthest tee box on the property so I wouldn't dent anyone's car. And I was under these big steel power lines, and a thunderstorm came through. I mean, pouring rain, thunder, lightning, everything. And everybody except for me ran from the storm. And I'm thinking, well, I spent $3. My life kind of is not in a good place right now. And I just held up the club and said, go ahead, take your best shot. And so I hit all my golf balls, and then the golf balls of two gentlemen who had run from the storm and left. And at the end of the hour, I couldn't even lift my arms anymore. I mean, I think the last couple of shots went like maybe 9 feet. That was about it. And I got to my car and opened the door, and the rain stopped and the sun came out, and I just started laughing. And I just looked up and remember thinking, well played. That was kind of funny. It was humorous to me because I was always a funny person. The next day, I was on the phone call with my life coach, and he says, okay, I got your notebook open. How was your week? And I said, put down your pen and listen to this. And I crafted a story about how funny that hour was and everything that happened, and of course, exaggerated things. And when he stopped laughing, he asked, have you ever thought about being a motivational speaker or a stand up comedian? I think you'd be great at both. I'd secretly wanted to do both since I was a kid, but I had no idea how to pursue it, nor did I have the confidence or the guts to go try it. And on his desk, talk about divine timing and everything, was a brochure from a local community college. 2 weeks later, they had a class starting called Intro to Stand Up Comedy. I never even knew there was such a thing. And I signed up for the class. And a week after that, I attended my first Toastmasters meeting to help me to get the tools to be a confident and competent communicator, to be able to share all of these things. So in that moment, an opportunity, I could have run from the storm, but instead, I got this amazing lesson out of it and all the building blocks that have now led to the past 20 years of my life.
Wow. When you said I've secretly wanted to do both as a kid, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, again, I feel like that goes back to the blessing of you never know who's placed in your life. You use a term like divine timing of just being able to have someone say, "Here's what to do," or "Here's how to enter into this new interest, or not a new interest, this field that you didn't have. I guess the training or the entryway or the roadmap into to getting into. I think
Yeah.
that's so powerful because um, one of the overarching company name of everything that I've created is called Activate the Dream. And the way I came up with Activate the Dream is because I thought about there's so many people, including myself, that have dreams that are unlived because there's some fear, there's some insecurity, and there's just some like, I don't know how. I don't know how, or I feel like I don't have the right connections, contacts, that type of thing. And learning to remove those barriers, because a lot of those barriers are in our minds. So it was
Mm.
interesting too, like how, when you were able to release and say, hey, this is something I always wanted to do. And then for someone else, like that's another confirmation, hey, you would be great at that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And one of the things that when you talk about stand up comedy, it makes me think about, and I mentioned this to you when we connected offline, is like how laughter has like such a healing property. When especially when you're going through, it sounds like too when you were outside hitting those golf balls, and it was just like sometimes when you're in just so much pain, the only release you have is like, you know what? This is just, let me just laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is such a healing thing. And, it's funny because in the world of comedy, a lot of comedy comes out of pain from a lot
Mhm.
of comedians. I mean, I was in the industry for 7 years and I saw this, and it's something it bothered me about the comedy industry. People think, oh, these comedians are so much fun. If regular, average, everyday people only knew half the pain that a lot of these entertainers and comedians are going through, that's the source of all these things. For a lot of them, their time on stage is actually therapy.
Mm.
And it's something that not a lot of people realize. So I stayed in comedy for, like I said, 7 years, but that was a part of it that bothered me the whole time. That I said, someday I'm just going to take all the clean material out of this. Not that I was a dirty comedian or anything, but I talked about adult related things. But I just took the style and the approach and I brought it into my speaking. And wouldn't you know, my speaking career grew and got even better.
Mm. Yeah, I saw Trevor Noah was on 60 Minutes, and he talked about ADHD and depression,
Mm-hmm.
and that he experiences both, and through a lot of therapy, a lot of uh, inner work, it kind of helps him through that. And he's and to your point, I just thought about it. One of the parts of the 60-minute interview is, though he's has all this success, acclaim, he's been like the host of the Grammys. What is he over the like the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, that type of thing. He's
Mm-hmm.
doing all that. He still won't give up his comedy because it's therapy for him.
Yeah.
He still does the stand up. So that's a really good point. And he's devoted so much to his time and to his craft just to continue, especially doing the shows. He's like almost in a new city every other weekend just to do those shows because it's something that still fuels him and helps him through his depression, which is
Mm.
very interesting too. Because I guess to your point, I wouldn't have thought that comedians experience so much depression.
Yeah, there's a lot of it in there, a lot of issues, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of pain in a lot of painful lives that translates into that little bit of time on stage. But sometimes for the other 23 hours of the day, they're still struggling quite a bit. And that was my biggest surprise about being around comedians for that long, to see that, especially among the headliners and the more successful people, being on stage, that is their therapy. And God love them. I hope that they always look forward to the next show, the next show, the next show, and just don't go into a really dark place otherwise.
Hmm. So I'm curious to know, as a motivational speaker, and
Mhm.
I've heard this term before, and I'm curious to know your take on it. Like, motivation is for the moment. So, what do you do for people who, or what would you advise for people like, well, yeah, I got real hyped up and excited, and I heard something very powerful, but maybe one comment could be, well, how do I apply it? Or another thought could be, well, after all of that, that high leaves, then what? Or I have to go back to my reality. What would be your thoughts around that?
Yeah, my first thing I always tell people is say, good, because I'm not one of those speakers. I'm not one of the people who's up there like hyping up and getting people ramped up to this emotional frenzy. I'm not one of the speakers, and this is how I always explain it. I'm not one of those speakers that goes, rah, 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 buy my stuff. And I'm not just up there trying to hype and in the moment capture people's credit card information and sell a program. I am by nature a storyteller, a humorist, and what I share from the beginning to the end is what has helped me over the years, from where my life was 20 years ago till now. Everything I talk about generally comes from my journals and my experiences. And the way I open up often on stage is say, hi, my name is Steve Gamlin. I am a professional speaker. My biggest goals are for you to wake up tomorrow morning and think one more positive thought, speak one more kind word, especially to the person in your mirror, and take one more positive action. And in our time on sharing together with me up on stage, I want to give you as many actionable items as possible, not to just fire you up, but to give you a map to get from where you are at least one step closer to where you want to go. And also, part of my mission is to help people see and visualize exactly the lives they want to lead, not just with material things. There's too much of that out there, but who you are, who you wish to become, the people you want to have around you, because that's critical. The energy you want to put out there in the world every day, and what you're all about, and what your core values are as well. That is my mission on stage, to create as many shifts as possible and connect directly with as many sets of eyeballs as possible, to know that I'm not speaking at them, I'm having a conversation with them. There just happens to be a lot of them out there.
Okay, and I've heard you use the term back to basics
Yes.
positivity.
Yeah.
Enlighten all of us on what that is, especially that back to basics part.
Yeah. There's so many people out there, and if you like, when I'm getting ready in the morning in the bathroom, I'll play a series of YouTube videos of classic rock songs, my favorite music to fire up. Well, what happens is the pre-roll on every video, every single one, is this latest new technology, this super secret formula, this patented famous person created this and nobody else knows about it. It's this special secret thing. I am so sick and tired in my own industry of everybody who has this groundbreaking new technology, formula, super secret everything. I go back to basics. I wake up every morning and I put pen to paper and I think of the 3 moments from the previous day I am most grateful for. Gratitude is an amazing gift you can give to your future self by saying something that is working well in your life today. It's my first building block every morning. Go downstairs and I work out every day, drink a bunch of water. I eat good food in single plate portions where I used to be seconds and thirds and more. And all of these very basic things. And some people say, well, Steve, I already do this. Great. Maybe you could do it better. Do the
Mm,
basics over and over. There's just so many people out there saying the latest, greatest. This is the book that's going to change my life, the speaker that's going to change my life, the course that's going to change my life, the $10,000 per person getaway weekend that's going to change my life. I try to take all that stuff off the table and remind people to get back to basics. See, back to basics over this past year has helped me to lose so far 28 pounds. It's helped me to get my business in check. It has helped me, not that I was an alcoholic, but I had a very lazy habit of a tall rum and coke every night. It was not serving me well. It was adding weight. It was causing me to not sleep well. When I don't sleep well, I don't work well. When I don't work well, I don't make as much money as I could. So I decided to take that very basic habit of waking up one day, looking at it and saying, I don't feel like having you today. And I've been saying that every day for 13 months. And it's made my mind clearer. It's made my body healthier. And it's just a back to basics thing. And I encourage people to put as many back to basics, simple, not always easy, simple steps in their lives and build new habits, build new neural pathways, build new behaviors without always chasing that next greatest thing.
That's really good. That's really it's reminds me of like we've heard the term like your drink your water, gratitude, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But are you doing it? And are
Mm.
you doing it regularly? And then how do you enhance what you're doing or add on to it or continue to master it? That's a really good point. Back to the basics of things like, oh, are you, getting your 10,000 steps in? What is your spiritual practice like? What is your communication like? Are you taking time to meditate? So it's like if you have all of these tools and you don't utilize them or you underutilize them, are they effective?
Mm.
That's a really good way to look at it. I'm curious. So what in terms of personal development or positivity research studying, what are you doing to continue to enhance, build, strengthen your like personal development? Is there something you're reading, studying, watching, mentorship? What does that look like for you?
The biggest book for me that I still listen to, I listen to the audio version often, at least once a year, is called The Go Giver. And it was by two gentlemen, John David Mann and Bob Berg. And it talks about not only having a vision for what you wish to create in the world, but also always being able to impact other people in a positive way, no matter what you do, and to be putting out this amazing energy. And when you're putting out the amazing energy and keeping an open mind, you become aware of opportunities out there to connect with people and see your next actions and to plug into all the best things out there. That book I've been listening to regularly for about 16 or 17 years since it first came out. More recently, books I'm listening to, Mel Robbins is somebody I like very much. And she has a book that came out last fall called The High Five Habit. And I heard about it in a podcast she had done with Ed Milet. And I absolutely adore Ed Milet's work as well. And she just talked about getting up in the morning, going to the bathroom mirror and high-fiving herself. And she said, what is a high five all about? You high five someone, you're creating joy, creating this energy. She says, I high five myself in the mirror, even though I was imperfectly myself, and it gave me energy to start every day. And so I've been listening to that book, the audio version, to get even more little basic steps to include in what I talk about and then mention her. And as I'm starting to mention more and more of these people who've influenced me, I get messages from people saying, hey, Steve, I saw you talked about that Mel Robbins book. I went and got it. Oh my gosh, it helped me to change the beginning of my day, which changed the rest of my day. So I love those little steps like that. I also love people's autobiographies because you get to hear where they started, where they went, how they blew it all up in their lives, like so many of us have done, and how they, the art of the comeback of all these people. And I find so much inspiration in people's real stories like that. Not just the how to, but seeing how they did it and then patterning my own life after that.
Oh, I love that. I love, love, love autobiographies, love documentaries. I think one of the things that's so powerful about autobiographies and biographies is like you can learn, in a couple hours, especially if it's a video, I guess, depending on if it's a book, maybe a day or so, what it may have taken someone their entire life to learn.
Mm, exactly.
And I was like, this is so powerful. And you always get um grand. I was about to call them nuggets, but it's like grand jewels of like, oh, okay. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Mm.
And Another thing that I think is grand that I'm super excited to talk to you about, which again, like was a huge highlight for me, is visualization.
Mm.
And you have, is it a program? Is it called Vision Mastery? What's the term?
Vision board mastery, yes.
Vision Board Mastery. Talk to us about what that is, because I think there's this idea of vision boards. You know, you hear of vision board parties, you hear of New Year's resolutions,
Yeah.
and I think they've gotten a bad rap. And I
Mhm.
am a 110% believer of vision boards because, and I didn't realize it, by the way. I accepted a new role in my day world, and the job, I mean, to the T, from like the how the work is set up to like who my supervisor is to the pay, like everything. And I had written that down about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd revisited it maybe every 90 days, just kind of glanced at it. I was like, this is what I want. So please talk to us about the power of visualization and these vision boards. And, you know, for anyone who is considering one, they don't have to wait till January. Tell us about
Yeah.
what we can do or how we can start our own vision board.
Yeah, I first heard about vision boards when, at the urging of my life coach back around 2004, he asked if I'd ever heard of a DVD called The Secret. And The Secret had just come out recently. The book had been out for a year or so prior, and it was all about the law of attraction. And I'd never even heard of the concept at the time. I understood the principle, but I'd never really heard about it. So I got the DVD and I watched it. It's about 98 minutes long. And about two-thirds of the way through, there was a gentleman named John Assaraf. And for 3 minutes out of 98 minutes, he talked about these things I'd never heard of called vision boards, which was a small poster board on which he had placed pictures of the goals and things that he wanted to have in his life. And I was so fascinated by that that I started to do some research on the power of visualization, the reticular activating system. When we say, oh, I want to buy this car in this color, in this model with these um, this version of the car. And all of a sudden we start to notice it everywhere. All of a sudden we're starting to see them all over the place. Well, that's our reticular activating system. So what I learned was that people who visualized their goals of what they wanted them to look like, and I took them a bit beyond look like, feel like, sound like, even smell like, to attach as many senses to the outcomes that we wanted. And a lot of people don't even know how to do that. They'll say, well, I just want more and better of what I have now. They're not quite sure where to go. So the biggest shift in what I've done versus a lot of other speakers out there is to dive deeply, to not just broad brush things anymore, but to get very specific of what we want. And even if we have to start with where we are right now, which is something not everybody teaches, I tell everyone, do an assessment of where your life is right now in your career, your finances, your physical health, your emotional well being, your relationships, your ethics and values, your faith and spirituality, if that's an important part of your life, and your connection to the world in a real way. And notice I've left out the fancy car, the fancy home, the private jet, the private helicopter, and the material things. All of those 8 areas of our lives are working together 24/7, leaning on each other and integrated. So I asked the question, wouldn't it be important if we would set goals for where we want all those areas of our lives to be, say, in 1 year, and start from there, to be creating the most powerful, strong, honest, passionate, connected versions of ourselves possible, so that when we are dialed into where we want to go, we start to see those opportunities. We start to see the people who are just like us, the same energy as us. You and I connected energy wise because I heard your podcast and said, gosh, I wonder if Raven would like to have me on and have a conversation. And so we connected. So all of these things, and I love that you mentioned resolutions, because a lot of people give resolutions a bad name. You've got New Year's resolutions and you've got goals. You've got vision board parties and you've got visualization and vision boards the way I teach them. It's something, but I just prefer to go more in depth and help people to create real results in their own lives. And my clients, I mean, I jump up and down, I laugh, I cry, I cheer them on, I stomp my feet, I fist bump and high five from here in my recording studio all the time, because I'm so proud of the people who take this next level idea and go apply it in their lives and just create greatness.
I love that. I love that. And you have inspired me to go back and look at what I want to visualize and also to putting the pen to paper. Actually, fun fact, after we initially connected, I started writing things down because I think
Yes.
there's power of when you write it down and you can go back and look at it as well, and just like the way that, what is it, like the neurotransmitters in your brain, and
Mm,
and I know the cars is not all the only thing, that people have on their visualization board, but that actually happened to me as well. I remember there was a car that I saw, fun fact, at the LA County Fair. I think it was 2017, and I went and sat in the car. I looked at the car. I was like, oh my gosh, I'd really like to have this. I took a screenshot on my phone, and I think it was about 18 months later, I had the exact cars. I know it's all about cars, but I remember thinking like, oh my God. And at the time, full transparency, I was like, yeah, right. You'll never get this car. And and it's interesting too, like how all of everything just worked for my good for me to be able to get that exact same interior, everything. So it's definitely powerful.
mm,
It definitely works, and I'm thankful that you are, sharing this tool set, and teaching us how we can develop it and utilize it to, and not just like, for, as you mentioned so eloquently, material things, but what we want for our entire lives, from a health standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a peace of mind standpoint, all those different, like how we're integrated as a person. I
mm.
think that's powerful. So before I ask my final question, please let all of our listeners and viewers know how they can find you online and how they can take their visualization to the next level.
Yeah, nice and easy. You can find me at stevegamlin.com, and that's Gamlin. And everything is there. And some testimonials and some stories of what some of my clients have created in their lives as well, which continues to just, I'm so proud of them. And it's all there at stevegamlin.com.
Perfect. And our last question for today is, what is the greatest lesson you've learned in your reset journey?
The greatest lesson actually came from one of my grandfathers, and he never said the words, but he lived it every day. Leave as many situations as you can better than you find them, because it's going to lead you to a really great place. So wherever I am, I never uh, go anywhere without seeing the opportunity to cause somebody to smile or laugh or hold the door for someone. Or when I go to the grocery store, I rescue abandoned shopping carriages. I call it shopping cart rodeo because A, it's great exercise, but B, it might keep someone's car from getting dented on a windy day.
Mhm.
And the coolest part of that is whenever I do it, I may look over my shoulder and see somebody else going to rescue another one. I mean, whether or not they saw me or they're just already a person in tune with that, it's causing a ripple effect. So if you just think of wherever you are, look around for even the tiniest opportunity, and what that does for me, from my vision of myself, is being the most connected person out there to whatever's happening around me every day, and to be able to cause a positive ripple.
I love that. That is a wonderful, wonderful way to close, creating ripples, positive energy, and just good vibes, and being what we want to see in this world. So thank you so much. Very appreciative, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, of course. And as always, please help us share and spread this message. Remember, a reset is always available to you.